What's up, everyone? Special episode for you guys here today. This is our interview finally with RipperJack from Tiger King season 2. It's a pretty fun experience. We're doing this video after. I know it's the intro, but we messed up on our original intro, so we're doing it before. Pretty awesome experience. It was really fun to sit down and talk and get like a little bit of a deep dive into Tiger King. Learn some stuff that no one else knew. Yeah, so we're working on that, editing now, like in now time, but you guys will see the video. And yeah, that's about it. We just really wanted to say our thanks to RipperJack for letting us interview him. I know some of the questions weren't probably easy for him to answer. Some little ones in there that might have not been easy for him, so we're grateful that he took time out of his day too and sat down with us for an hour or two. Yeah. Yeah, so you guys will transition into that video now. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I hope you really enjoy this video. It was a fun experience. So straddle and get your popcorn ready and have fun watching Tiger King. It was a crazy ride too. So yeah, strap in. Peace, guys. What's up, everyone? We're here with RipperJack today for an interview on Tiger King 2 and also our personal review. You want to get right into the questions? Yeah.
Hey, let me butt in real quick. First, thanks for having me. I just say I saw you all doing a video, I don't know, a long time ago. I think I messaged you guys on YouTube. But I just want to say thanks for having me. And also have to put in a disclaimer before we start that anything I say is my own opinion, not the opinion of anyone that I represent. And I don't give legal advice or medical advice or anything like that. So I have to put that out there because I still work for other clients, and things I say is not a reflection of them. It's me. So we got that out of the way. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. We also want to say thank you to RipperJack for reaching out and finding our channel and just being there and helping us through the journey.
Sure, man. You're welcome. I'm happy to be on here. I mean, I really like channels like what you guys have. I think people should pay attention to, YouTube channels that don't have the millions of followers.
Right. Yeah.
You need to expand your mind and take your chance with other content creators out there.
Yeah, I agree too.
All right. Well, so you guys did see Tiger King and season 2 of Tiger King. Okay.
Yeah, we watched both of them, which was pretty cool because I remember watching season 1 like a while ago when it first came out because I was still I think I was in high school when the first season came out, and it was like a big thing then, like with all the memes and everything going on.
Right.
And, it was cool to rewatch season 2 because I don't think it would have ever been like a show that me and Jay watched together, because we like to watch a lot of movies and stuff, obviously. So it's cool to kind of branch out on a different type of show. Yeah, it was your first time watching the whole season 1 and 2.
Oh, so Jay had never seen it before.
Yeah, it was the first for Jay on season 1 and 2.
I will say that Joe Exotic was from Oklahoma, which is where I am from. And I just want to say that Joe Exotic is not a reflection of people from Oklahoma. It's very rare that you come across someone like him. But trust me, not everybody from Oklahoma. I mean, the majority of Oklahomans are not like Joe Exotic.
Yeah, we definitely got some people like that here in Syracuse too.
So you're in Syracuse.
Yeah, Syracuse, New York. Yeah.
So the Northeast. Okay, so
Yeah.
winter has arrived up there.
We've already gotten a little snowstorm. Nothing like we're used to, but
Yeah, man, you guys have brutal winters up there.
yeah.
I think. Hold on, I got to silence my phone. I think I just heard it go off.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
That too.
All right, got that.
So yeah, getting into the interview, our first question that we thought of was, when do you think that Joe Exotic is getting out of prison?
Oh, when is Joe Exotic getting out? I think the earliest he can get out is like 2037.
Wow.
He was sentenced to 22 years, and then his previous attorneys filed an appeal, and his sentence did get reduced by 1 year. So he went in, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. So he's still got 15 or 16 years left in his sentence, and I think he's in his early 60s. So, I mean, he might not ever get out.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely.
Prison will age someone pretty fast.
Yeah, for sure. Now, is he by himself? Like, does he have like a special cell, or is he with like general public?
He's with the general public.
Oh, okay.
Although I do hear that he gets put in solitary confinement a lot. And I guess it's been alleged that he's been caught with like 3 or 4 cell phones. And so, you know, if you get caught with a cell phone in prison, I guess they put you in solitary confinement. So what I've heard is like 3 or 4 times he's been caught. So when that happens, that hurts your chances of getting early release. I mean, you know, get out early because of good standing or things like that. So I don't think he'll get out earlier than what the sentence is.
Yeah, that would definitely make sense. I hope he doesn't.
Well, he was convicted of some pretty serious crimes.
Jay wanted to know if you thought that he was wrongly convicted.
You know, in the beginning, like after I saw the show, I thought maybe he was, you know, because when you watch the show, you know, you're kind of like, oh man, did he get a raw deal? Did he really do all this stuff? So after I watched the show, I wondered about that, but I also wondered like what happened to Don Lewis. Mm-hmm. You know, after the show, I was like, did they ever find that guy? Did they find Carole's missing ex-husband? Like that was my biggest question. But as I was doing my work, and for those of you watching that don't know, I'm in season 2 of Tiger King. I don't know if you guys mentioned that or
yeah, we did like an intro in the beginning.
Okay. Okay. So, all right, I'll let you guys handle that then.
No, okay.
But after I started working on the Don Lewis case, there were things that I did get, like information. I did talk to people that worked at the zoo that were involved in the trial with Joe Exotic. But after I don't want to say I looked like I worked on Joe's case because I didn't, but there was information and evidence that was presented to me. And after seeing that stuff, it's my opinion that he was not wrongfully convicted. There are like 3 recordings of him. I gotta be careful how I say this. There are. Well, actually, one of the jury members said that they listened to 2 recordings of him trying to pay someone to, I'll say unalive, because if you use the other word on YouTube, they'll restrict your video. But there is a recording of him paying an FBI agent or trying to pay an FBI agent to unalive Carole Baskin. And in that recording, he tells the FBI agent that he paid someone else to do it and they didn't do it. I mean, so he admits to the crime because once you pay, that's one of the elements of the crime. So he admits to paying someone else to try to do it, and that person didn't do it. And then he's trying to pay an FBI agent to do it. And then supposedly there's a third recording, but I don't know if there really is or not. But in the trial, they did interview one of the jury members afterwards, and they said there's a recording. So if there's a recording of him, I mean, you can't really say he was wrongfully convicted when you have a recording of him trying to pay someone to do something like that. And he was also convicted on 5 counts of, he had these cats, these endangered cats, the big cats. And I guess he was convicted with the putting 5 of them down. But if you listen to like Jeff Lowe, who was in the show, who supposedly stole the zoo, but I don't think he actually did. And like James Garretson, they claim that Joe actually did that to over 100 cats to make room for small ones, because the big ones you couldn't pet. So you get rid of the big ones and have your moms have kittens, because the small ones the kids could pet, and that's how Joe would make his money there, having kids come in and you pay, $75 to sit with a little baby tiger for 10 minutes and pet it and hold it. So when you have, 200 large cats, you don't have any rooms for babies. So you got to get rid of those large cats. And so they claim that there was over 100 cats, large cats, that were put down for no reason except to make more room so you could have this cub petting thing going on. It is horrible. It really is.
Essentially just for money.
That's exactly, yes. Yeah, it's not to preserve the animals because they are endangered. It wasn't for that. It was to exploit them for money, which is the same thing Carole Baskin's been doing for, since the 90s when she got involved with Don Lewis. Carole Baskin's done the same exact thing, except she won't admit that she exploited the animals that she has. So no, I don't think he was wrongfully convicted at all. I didn't hear that.
Jay just said that was pretty deep.
It really is. And I'll tell you, I have the trial transcripts. So I'll email you the trial transcripts if you guys want to read. The trial was 7 days, but I can email you the trial transcripts. And
yeah, we would definitely look at those.
It's a very interesting read, because what's in the trial transcripts is really not what was in the show. Because in the show, the jet ski guy, James Garretson, in the show, he's made out to be like the rat, the FBI rat, the informant. But in reality, when you read the transcript, John Finley, who was Joe's husband that had all the missing teeth, he was actually the rat. In the transcripts, you can see he is spilling the beans, and they were probably going to charge him with something as well. But he's the one that got the fake ID for the supposed hitman, Alan Glover. I think John actually drove Alan Glover down to Texas to get the fake ID so that he could use the fake ID to travel to Florida and couldn't be tracked. But John Finley was the one that really got Joe put away. It was him and not James Garretson. But yeah, I'll send you the trial transcripts, and then I have them on a Google Drive. So I'll send you the links, and then in this video, if you want to put the links for the transcripts in the description of this video, then anyone watching can go down and read them. Yeah, but they are really interesting. and they tell the real story about Joe Exotic and the murder for hire scheme.
So getting back onto our questions, do you have an opinion on Carole Baskin that you could tell us? No.
I can say without getting your channel demonetized or taken down. I don't know.
It was just something we wanted to know after we know like there's a lot of like the memes, songs made about her. So
Yeah, and once again, let me just put that disclaimer that anything I say, I'm speaking for myself, not on behalf of anyone else. But my thoughts about Carole Baskin, it's my opinion that Carole Baskin got away with a murder. That's my opinion. She's been caught in so many lies, just one lie after another. I think she's a horrible, horrible, horrible person. I mean, it's. I had so many calls from people, and I met with so many people that had dealings and run-ins with her. Yeah, I think she's a horrible. I think she's a horrible person, and when ABC had her on Dancing with the Stars,
yeah, we saw that.
I was just like, if they only knew all of the stuff this lady has done, there's no way they would bring her on, or maybe they would, but yeah, I don't have anything good to say about her. I really don't.
Do you think like Netflix or like how like what do you think like made like her famous? Like just the storyline of it, or like do you think like something played a factor into it, or nothing at all?
Well, the story that I heard on how this, like the whole show, how it got started. In the beginning, they say that Eric Good was going to look at reptiles because he collects reptiles, and Eric Good is one of the producers of Tiger King. But in the beginning, they say that he was out in Florida looking for reptiles, and he came across this snow leopard that was in the back of a van on a hot summer day, and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that part of it was true. And something they didn't show in the show when they showed that van actually had an air conditioning unit in the ceiling, and the van was fully insulated. And inside that van, it's like 60 degrees in there. It's like super cold, but they didn't show that in the show. But later, I think that guy's name that owned the van was Mark McCarthy. But later, Mark published like some text messages between him and Eric Good, where Eric admitted that he's actually blamed it on Netflix. Said that the way they put it together wasn't how it happened, and Eric apologized to him and said, "I'm sorry it came across that way. I know the van was air conditioned and all that, but I think what happened is there was a company out of California that works with the Discovery Channel, and they had been filming Joe Exotic for like 7 years, trying to do a reality show. And I think that somehow Eric Good found out about this guy in Oklahoma that had all these cats, and there was this filming or whatever, and he just went to go film. But what I was told is they were filming Joe. They went to Florida to find out more about this Carole Baskin person, and when they approached her, supposedly they told her that they were going to help expose the mistreatment of animals and blah, blah, blah. And so they started, interviewing Carole, and supposedly they only interviewed her 3 or 4 times for season 1. But at some point in one of the interviews, she just blurted out, "Yeah, one day my husband went missing and I never saw him again," when they were talking about exotic animals. And then she quickly changed the subject to something else. And when they left her house and got in their vehicle, like the producers looked at each other and was like, what was that stuff about her husband? And
Yeah.
they started looking into that. And then they're like, oh my gosh, her husband did go missing. And so then the next time they interviewed her, they brought that up at some point. And I guess that's where it really, things didn't make sense. But I think they were filming Joe. They went to talk to her, and she blurted out that her husband was missing, which I believe them because I've got some old footage, and I'll send it to you guys, of her doing an interview long before Tiger King. And at one point in the interview, she says something very similar to that. Like, yeah, my husband just walked out the door one day and never came back. Like, she blurts that out in an interview that has nothing to do with her missing husband. So I'll find that and I'll send it to you so you guys can see it.
Yeah, I
But
would like to see that because it just sounds very random, like a
it
random
it
thing.
was random.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And in that interview, she talks. I mean, there's just some crazy things that she has talked about. Like in that interview, she talks about being in this horrific car crash where she got T-boned, and when she got out of the car, she went over to check on these people. And she says, I don't ever remember doing that, but when I came to, they told me that I went over and checked on these people to make sure they were okay. And then once I found out they were okay, I walked over to the side of the road and just collapsed. And she tells this detailed story about her being the victim of a car crash, and her first concern was other people. And then there's another time when she tells this story, but the details are different than. She actually says it was a different car that she was driving. Like there's details that you're like,
Like,
how would you?
you can't make those ones up.
Yeah, it's just obviously she's telling a story like a lie.
Yeah.
And I have a team of people that are great at researching cases and stuff, but we went back and looked like in so many counties of all these places that she lived to try to find some kind of car wreck, that happened around this time that she said. We never found anything of the sort. Like
Wow.
it's just a made up story. She talked about these other made up stories, and she had written a personal like she never meant for this to be out in public, but I somehow got a copy of it. But she had written this personal like timeline of her whole life. And in there, she has a story about when she was a kid, her little brother was being picked on, and these kids had a gas can. They poured a circle of gas around her little brother, and they lit it on fire. And she had to run in there and pick her brother up and put him up, on her shoulders to protect him from the fire. Like, it's a crazy, crazy story. And I'm just like, but she wants people to think that she's some saint, but I'll send you guys that timeline thing, because as you read through it, you'll clearly understand that nobody lives a life like what she claims to have lived, from being homeless on the streets to sleeping under cars. And it's really sickening, some of the stuff that she says that she's done.
Yeah.
To try to get some type of I think she wants people to look at her and go, oh my gosh, she was like the lowest of the low and came out on top.
Yeah.
That's
sorry for
it. Yeah, and that didn't happen. That's just, it didn't happen that way. But I'll send that to you as well. You guys will have plenty of material to read and look at. Well, you guys did your homework.
Yeah. Jay said we came prepared.
That's good. That's good.
So Jay wants to like kind of get back on the Netflix part of it, and you're curious on like how you got involved into the show. Like, did they come to you, or like Netflix, or how did that come about? I
Yeah.
know we were talking about that a couple times when you first got a message from you. We were like, how?
Right. Yeah. That's actually a really good question. But before, well, I have a YouTube channel. I I had actually my original YouTube channel was for gaming. I would do
Okay.
like instructional videos for like Clash Royale or Clash of Clans, mobile
Yeah.
video games. And the only reason I did is I had teammates that didn't know how to do certain attacks. And you could try to explain them in like the clan chat on your phone, but they'd never understand. So I was like, hey, I'll just do it, record it, and put on my YouTube video and just look at it. So that's why I actually did my YouTube channel. And then I don't know, years later, I watched a show on Netflix called Making a Murderer, and I started making videos about that show because that was about a wrongful conviction. Um, and then in January of 2020, I started making more YouTube videos. But in March, the show came out, Tiger King. I didn't watch it when it first came out. Actually, maybe day one or day two when it came out, I saw it on the Netflix thing,
Yep.
and I watched it for like 15 minutes and turned it off. I might not have even made it 15 minutes, but I watched a little bit of it and I'm like, what in the, like,
I think that might have been everyone's first reaction.
yeah, I was just like,
And
but
pull us all back.
yeah, I turned it off. I was like, I don't know what the hell that was. And then a couple of weeks later, I was watching NBA basketball, and during a halftime report, Shaquille O'Neal said something about it's been a crazy first half, crazy like that Tiger King show or something like that. Like he dropped the name of the show, and I was like, oh, I think that was that stupid show I started watching. And then a day or two later on like Good Morning America or one of those shows, the panel or the host, they were there talking and they started talking about Tiger King and how crazy it is. And they didn't show clips, but they just said, that's a crazy show. And I was like, and it had been out for a couple of weeks at this point. I was like, all right, I'm going to go back and watch it, and I'll just watch a couple of episodes and give it a chance. And it took me over a week to watch the whole thing. It's only 7 episodes. I mean, so you could binge it all in one day, but
Yeah.
it it took me over a week to watch it. That was at the end of March, and then and I'm getting to your question, by the way, on either April 1st or the day before, I got done watching it, and I looked over at my wife, and I was like, what do you think happened to Don Lewis? The Carol's missing husband. I was like, you think they ever found him? So I went online. I started looking, like what happened to Don Lewis? Did they find Don Lewis? And after about 20 minutes, I couldn't find anything. And normally on a show like that, normally after a couple of days, there's always one YouTuber out there that will start covering something or at least looking into it.
Yeah.
And nobody, like there was people making videos about Carole and Joe, like funny videos,
Yeah.
but nothing about Don Lewis. And I was like, nobody's helping this family or trying to. Anyway, so I reached out to a person that I'd worked with on a wrongful conviction from that Making a Murderer show. And I was like, hey, have you seen Tiger King? And they're like, yes, exclamation point. I'm like, what happened to Don Lewis? And they're like, I don't know. I was like, I can't find anything online. I was like, do you think we should start a research group on Facebook and see if we can find out what happened to him? And then the next day, they talked to a couple of people. The next day was April 1st. They talked to a couple of people, and they're like, hey, I got Jinxie and this other person. I've started the Facebook group. So let's see, what we can find out. And I knew that Jinxie and the person I was talking to, Nosy Ren, were really good at researching and uncovering stuff. So we started the Facebook group, and within that was April 1st. I think on April 2nd or April 3rd, I had Don Lewis's secretary, who worked for him for like 20 years or whatever, on my YouTube channel interviewing her, finding out like, well, what, you were the last person to see him at work, blah, blah, blah. So I interviewed her. And then after that, I interviewed the handyman's, I might have interviewed the handyman's, yeah, I interviewed the handyman's ex-wife second, I think. And after that interview, that's when things really took off, because she said something that was like jaw-dropping. She actually said that her husband at the time, which was the handyman for Don Lewis, they had gotten into an argument. And she said that he told her if she left him, that he would put her through the grinder like he did Don Lewis. That's what her husband told her at the time. And of course, I'm just like, what? Anyway, I interviewed her, had it on my YouTube channel, and then I started, interviewing other people. We started finding public records. I was putting them on my YouTube channel. And then I found a conflict of interest with the sheriff, who is supposed to be investigating the case. And the sheriff had been donating money to Carole Baskin's nonprofit animal rescue place. And I was like, this is the guy that's supposed to be investigating the case, but he's doing $5,000 donations to Carole. I'm like, that's a huge conflict.
Yeah.
And him and his wife and kids had gone out to Carole's place and gotten private tours and things like that. And I was like, anyway, so we had the records of the donations, and I made a video about that, saying this is a conflict of interest. He should pass this to another county or whatever. So I put that video out, and then the next day I had a phone call from one of the producers of the show. And she said, how are you getting all this information? Someone had sent her some of the links for the videos that I had made. And she's like, where are you getting all of this information from? I was like, well, I have a Facebook group with, 400 or 500 people in it. And, this is the kind of work we do. And anyway, she asked how long I'd been working on it. And I said, well, we just started the Facebook group a couple of weeks ago. I said, so a couple of weeks. And she's like, you mean you haven't been working on this for like 5 or 6 years? I was like, no, I just saw the show like a couple of weeks ago and we just started. She's like, oh my gosh. She's like, you're uncovering more stuff than we have in 5 years of filming, I said, well, yeah. I said, I got a group of like 400 people that don't sleep, and they're just scouring the internet for anything and everything, all these public records. And then she said, well, next time we come to Florida to film, do you mind if we contact you and sit down and do an interview? And I was like, oh, I'm not in Florida. I said, I'm in Oklahoma. She's like, oh. She's like, so are you related to the family of Don Lewis? And I was like, no, I don't know them. Like, I don't know them, never met them, never talked to them. At that point, I'd never talked to them. She's like, so are you friends with Joe? Or, I was like, no, I never even knew who he was. Like, I live in Oklahoma, but have nothing to do with any of that. Anyway, so that's how I got involved. And then a week or two after that, I had reached out to Don Lewis's granddaughter, had made a video on TikTok saying, like she was the granddaughter of Don Lewis or whatever, and she thinks Carole Baskin did this. And anyway, I tried to contact her, but couldn't get to her because she had this viral video, and she went from 300 followers to, 20,000 overnight. So you couldn't get a message to them. And so I ended up tracking down her fiance and finding out where he worked. And I called his work. And I was like, hey, my name is Jack. I have a YouTube channel. I've interviewed some people about your fiance's grandfather, and I think I know what happened to her grandfather. And I'd like to talk to one of his daughters or his daughters to let them know what we've uncovered so that they can give it to law enforcement or whoever. And then that evening, I got an email from one of the daughters. And so I scheduled to go down there to Tampa like a week or two after that. And of course, when I went down there, I told the producer that called me that I was going down there. So I went down there. I was there for three and a half weeks, maybe. And the producer and a film crew came down there, and then they filmed almost every day for that visit when I was there. But that's how it started. I just started making videos on YouTube with factual evidence of, I make videos and always put the evidence there because I don't want to be sued.
Right.
And if you're going to make a claim about something so serious as, what we were talking about, you need to have something to back it up. So, I have boxes of like printed out stuff. And then I have these like hard drives. I have about 11 of these hard drives, external hard drives stored outside of my house someplace with so much information and video interviews of people that when I went to Florida that I interviewed, so much stuff. But that's how I got started. Made videos on YouTube, put out evidence, and next thing you know, things like went crazy.
So like a fast process, or was it kind of slow? Or like right when you put those videos out, you said it was like 3 or 4 days after you said?
Well, YouTube's kind of weird. When, back then I had on my channel, I think I had maybe like 1,600 subscribers, which was fine because I didn't have a YouTube channel. I wasn't trying to get subscribers. It was just to put videos out so people could see what I was talking about, like with these cases or whatever. But when I started doing those first interviews, they didn't get, they might have, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 views on them. But I didn't care as long as there was one person that saw it that could make a change, or, that's the only reason. I mean, it kind of was slow, I guess, with that aspect as far as like views and all that. But as soon as I started reaching out to potential witnesses, and then I would send them those videos, then it was fast. Then it was like, yeah, I'll tell you everything I know. And then there were some people that they didn't want to talk on the phone. They didn't want to email. They're like, look, I live here and I don't want to get involved because I know how, I gotta be careful how I say this. They said they were worried about being retaliated against by different entities in Florida. So there were some people, that was one of the reasons I went to Florida, because there was someone that had, they were a really good source, but they didn't want to talk on the phone or email. They would only talk to me in person. But once I made those, once I got the interview with the handyman's ex-wife, which was like day 2 or 3, once people saw that interview, after a week or two, things did start going. Things did move pretty fast. And I mean, there was a time when I was like, oh my gosh, there's not enough time in the day to talk to all of these people that have information. But I mean, it kind of was slow, I guess, in the beginning. But man, once you start uncovering real evidence and you put it out there for people to see, things can move pretty fast.
Yeah. So I know you kind of touched base a little on like what you were doing before the Domino's case, like with your YouTube channel, but like we were also curious like what else you did before and like who was on that case for you?
Actually, before that, in January of 2020, I made a video like on January 10th. I'll never forget the day. On January 10th, 2020, I went up to a small town in Kansas, town in Highland, Kansas, and I made a video alleging that this college, this state college, was kicking students out for being black. And from actually, I started working on that before that, but January 10th, I made that video, which is a pretty serious allegation to accuse a college of kicking people out because of the color of their skin. But I made that video, and for 2.5 months, I worked on that case, exposing what this college was doing to students. And then in March of 2020, the ACLU filed a federal lawsuit on behalf of 4 students against that college. So right before Tiger King, I was working on exposing this college. And I will say there was another lawsuit filed by 3 coaches at that college, and the school settled with them. And there's still a current lawsuit right now against this college. So before that, I was working on exposing a college in Kansas for doing some horrific people to kids. And then when the ACLU filed the federal lawsuit, you know, I was like, okay, I can step back and let them take over. And so the ACLU filed that lawsuit, and then I think it was 2 weeks after that, I saw Tiger King. And I was like, oh man, it's just like, I have time. You know, I'm not working on anything. So, but before that, I was working on that college lawsuit. And before I started on that college thing, I was doing professional gaming, like video games. So I nothing really that exciting. I was playing Spider-Man.
Jaylonda was curious on how you do your research online, like for cases.
Back then in it's probably the same way now, although there's more options just in the last, like 2023, which we're almost 2024. There's actually a lot more options now, but even in 2020, if anyone's going to do something like this, man, there's so much you can do. But I went to Facebook. Me and a couple other people created a Facebook group. You know, I think our Facebook group was called the Don Lewis Files or Code Case Files, Don Lewis or something like that. But you got to have volunteers because it takes a lot of time, like man hours. But public records, you know, back in 1997 when Don Lewis went missing, the internet was fairly new. Back then, you actually had to go to the courthouse and file something. If you wanted a copy of something, you couldn't just go online and get a copy of a public record. You had to go to the courthouse, search through all these files till you found it, and then copied it. But now, you know, like you can just go to, like, for instance, that county, Hillsborough County in Florida. You can just go to the county website and type in someone's name, like type in Carole Baskin, and it pulls every public record that has her name on it. And there are thousands and thousands of documents with her name because she was doing real estate stuff. And so what we would do is we would find these documents, and then any name on the document, we would track that person down and call them and say, hey, there's a house back in 1995 that you sold. Did you sell this to Carole Baskin or whoever? And you'd be surprised, a lot of people that we talked to, like witness signatures that were on some of these documents, would track down. there was people we came across said, no, I never signed that. I was never a witness for her on a real estate document. And then we would find out that they worked at, back then it wasn't called Big Cat Rescue. Back then it was called Wildlife on Easy Street. But there were volunteers that worked there. And when you volunteered, you would have to sign a release form. And a lot of people I talked to said the release form had a, like some wording, whatever, and then there was a big space and you'd sign your name down at the bottom. And there was a lot of people that had worked there that had signed a release form that somehow became witnesses on real estate documents. And some of these people we talked to said, I never signed a real estate document for her, but she has my signature on file because I signed a release form. So that's one way is public records. Another way, there's all of these background search, like I think peoplefinder.com is one of them. White Pages, I think it's whitepages.net, or it could be whitepages.com. But there's a lot of these websites where you can pay, like a monthly membership, and you just type someone's name in, and it gives you like past addresses, phone numbers, criminal history. Like the internet has so much information on there that most of the research came from, searching public records and then tracking people down, calling them and asking them, did this happen? But I mean, I did some research, but I'm telling you, most of the research came from the people in this Facebook group. Like they would, if they found something they thought was relative, they would post it in the group. And then if it was something that, like, oh man, this is like really big, we don't want Carole to know we have this, then we'd send a message, hey, by the way, we're going to pull this post because we don't want this out for the public. We don't want Carole to know that we've uncovered this, or, stuff like that. But for the most part, the people in the Facebook group, which now has like 12,000 members in it, the people in there are the ones that were finding most of this stuff that, I mean, it's amazing what a group of people can do when they're obsessed, but I wish I could say I was the one doing all the research, but no, there was a group of people that were just like in beast mode, finding so much information.
People get obsessed with that type of stuff.
I did too. Like I was obsessed as well. Yeah. Absolutely.
People want to be the first to figure something out.
Sorry, I drink a lot of water during the day.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. I do too.
It's the key. Drinking plenty of fluids or water.
So, in your own personal opinion, what do you think that happened to Don Lewis?
As I said a little bit earlier, it's my personal opinion that Don Lewis was murdered in August of 1997. I have no doubt in my mind that Don Lewis was murdered.
That's kind of the assumption we came to after watching the show too. So
yeah, he Carole and him actually had been fighting for a couple of years. Like they weren't getting along for the last couple of years of their marriage. And in my interview with his secretary, Ann McQueen, who, she worked with him every day, they were best friends. But on August 15th, 1997, he came into work and she said he looked like crap. He hadn't shaven. And Don was a guy that shaved every day. But came into work wearing the same shirt he had on from the day before. He had slept in the back of a tractor trailer, like an 18-wheeler, the cargo trailers. He had slept in one of the trailers the night before because him and Carole had gotten into a fight. But he came into work on Friday, August 15th, and told his secretary that him and Carole had gotten into a big fight. He slept in the trailer, didn't sleep at home. Like I said, trailer, a lot of people think trailer and they'll think like a trailer home, like a mobile home, but that's not what it was. It's like a tractor trailer. And around, they ate lunch. And I think around 1:30 he left the office, but he told his secretary, Ann McQueen, he said, I'm going home. I'm telling Carole I want a divorce. And he had told Carole this before, but he said, I'm going home. I'm telling her I want a divorce. I'm serious this time. Like, I'm done with it. This is it. And she never saw or heard from him again after that. Yeah. So, and on top of that, 1997 cell phones, they weren't like the cell phones we have now.
Yeah.
They were, like the flip phones. I don't even know if they had flip phones. They might have flip phones in 97, but it was more like the Nokia, I think it was a Nokia 5150. Just a plain, simple phone. The only games on there was that Snake game. And then I think Sprint or Nextel had their little walkie-talkie phones. But phones were not like they are today. But
huge, like bricks.
Yeah, but he went home and he always had his cell phone, always. But he went home and never heard from him again. But guess who ended up with his cell phone? Carole. Carole ended up with the man's cell phone. Of course, she claimed that he went to Costa Rica or maybe he was kidnapped by the Mexican mafia or all these things. But she ended up with his cell phone, his wallet, and his Rolex watch.
Did she ever say why?
Well, she did make up a story about how she ended up with her cell phone, and this was one of those suspicious stories where in the show she talked about she had to do this late night run to Albertsons to get some milk for the cats, which Albertsons didn't sell milk for baby cats, like big cats. But she said when she made that run to Albertsons, her car broke down and Don had to come and get her. And when he came to pick her up, he gave her his cell phone in case she broke down on the way home. But he was in his own car following her home. So if she was to break down, he would have been right there. So that's how she claims she got his cell phone, is that he gave it to her when her car broke down on, I think that was the Thursday night before he went missing. Was it that night? Yeah, I think that's the night that she made that late night run. Or was that Friday? I'd have to go back and look at my notes. But anyway, she claims she got his phone like that. But his secretary says that Carole told her she found Don's phone in one of the cars. So you have two different stories. But Carole's only told the one story, that she got his cell phone from Don directly when her car broke down. But you wouldn't give someone your cell phone to call you if you're going to follow them home.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, that whole thing, that whole night is real fishy. And she says she started walking home. She ran into her brother, who was a sheriff's deputy at the time there. Like, she ran into her brother like 2 or 3 in the morning as she was walking home. Like, there's this crazy story that doesn't make sense. I'll send you what I have on that. So if you guys want to read about it, you can. But she does these. She does this diary thing on her YouTube channel where she's going back reading her diary entries, and in one of those entries she talked about how she got this cell phone, but nobody believes it.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem too believable. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, a lot of times the simplest explanation is normally true. So when people start telling these elaborate stories about, like, oh, he was going to go to Costa Rica, he was getting this truck loaded in the trailer, and he was going to do all these cars. Like, when they start doing this long, elaborate story about something, sometimes it's not true. They're just trying to sell you
Yeah.
something, you know?
So another question we had that we don't remember if it was mentioned in the show was how much was Don Lewis worth?
Yeah, in the show, his attorney, there's actually a couple of different people that came up with numbers about how much he was worth. I think one of the numbers that was reported was $7 million. I think his attorney, his former attorney, I can't remember in the show if he said $20 million. But personally, minimum. I mean, he owned a lot of real estate. He had a lot of stuff. I think he was worth between $10 and $20 million. I think he had millions of dollars in cash. Like he would hide money. He would bury money at his place there. Like he had, some people would call it a junkyard, but to him it wasn't a junkyard. He would buy machinery and cars for cheap and then turn around and sell and make a profit. But there were things that he, like there was an old truck that he had bought and he had buried a bunch of money and then parked that old truck on it, like one of the tires on it. And then someone wanted to buy the truck and he's like, yeah, I don't want to sell that truck. And anyway, he ended up selling the truck and someone that was working for him sold it. But Don Lewis came in, the truck was gone. And that, he was upset because that was the marker for one of his stashes of money. But he had, there's reports of him flying to Costa Rica with millions of dollars in cash with him. So I think and it might not be true, but you can look at his real estate records. Like you can come up with almost $10 million in property and assets that he had.
So did he? I'm sorry.
No, it's I think he could have had a lot more than that. He was pretty savvy when he knew how to make money and how to hide it.
Did he make his money by doing like real estate? It was like real estate and like buying stuff and reselling for more, like fixing up.
Yeah, he made a lot of money in real estate. When he got married to his first wife Gladys, one of the things that he would do is he would buy old washers and dryers that weren't working, and he would repair them and then advertise them in the newspaper. And so that's how he started making money, was just repairing old washers and dryers. And then he learned how to do real estate. And it might be like this in every state, but in Florida they have these, when people don't pay their taxes on property, you can go in there and pay the taxes on the property, even if you don't own it. But you can pay, and just this is not financial advice to anyone. I just want to put that out there. But what he would do is he would go and pay these taxes. And if the property owner, I think you have like 3 years to pay the person who paid it or something to that effect. It's really weird how it works, but you can go in, pay the taxes, and after 3 years, if they haven't paid you, then you can put a lien on the property, or there's some loophole in there where you actually can put a lien on the property and almost name your price for the taxes that you paid. It's something like that. It's kind of weird, but Don would go and buy these or pay for these. There's a name for it. I can't think of what it's called, but he would pay the taxes on these properties. And then I don't want to say he strong-armed people, but he would say, hey, I paid $5,000 on this stuff and I need you to pay me back, or I'm going to put a lien on it or something like that. And they would have to pay him more than what he paid because, I mean, he had control of it. It's something to that effect. But and it's legal. You can still do it today. But he was doing that. And then I think there's also something like you pay the taxes, and if that person passes away, and no one claims the property or something like that, then you get the property. Like, you don't, I mean, it's yours. And then he also would do mortgages. And back in the 90s, the mortgage rates were like from a bank, they might have been like 15, 16%. So Don would do mortgages to high risk people and maybe charge them 22% interest rate, which can be turned into a lot of money. And so he was doing like a rent to own thing. But you say, you can rent this house, but we're going to do like a rent to own. This is your mortgage payment or rent payment or whatever. And a lot of times after a couple of years, the person would either move, quit paying or whatever. They didn't have the money to buy the house. But, if you're making 20 some percent interest on your cash flow, your money, that adds up to a lot of money. I mean, so he was savvy when it came to real estate and buying junk and turn around and selling it for a profit. Yeah, he was really smart with real estate. I mean, that's how he made a lot of money in real estate.
Money's definitely to be made there.
So
You guys-
we had a question that we had like while we were doing some research for this interview. We started watching some of the YouTube videos that were out there, and we noticed that Carole claimed in her videos that Don could barely read or write, and that she taught him everything he knew about real estate. So like, do you believe her and that like she made him a millionaire? Like, do you believe any of that? Obviously not. But what's your opinion on it?
I would tell you when this subject has come up so many times, and I can't tell you how this is so far from the truth. Don had like 4 subscriptions to newspapers. Back then you didn't have like eBay or Craigslist and like Facebook Marketplace. Back then, if you wanted to buy used stuff, it was the newspaper. Don had 4 subscriptions, like 4 different newspapers, and every morning when he came into work, he was going through all the classified ads to try to find something that would be worth buying that he could make money off of. And then sometime in the real estate documents, there were times when the bank or some of the financial people would make mistakes in the real estate documents. And this is from his secretary. Don would throw these papers down in front of the banker or whoever and say, hey, this isn't right. Like, this is not how this is done. And he would correct them on how the paperwork was supposed to be written. So if this man could not read or write, Don had bad penmanship skills, and he didn't have good grammar skills. Like in his restraining order that he filed against Carole, he had to handwrite it, but you can see that he didn't know how to spell. But everything he needed to say, he could say, but he wrote it out. But like he might spell a word instead of spelling, let me think of something that would be, like some words, all right, like no, like, what I'm saying. He might have spelled no, N-O, instead of K-N-O-W. So that kind of stuff, he was not good at spelling. But as far as reading and writing, he could read and write just fine. And every time I hear this stuff, and I know the videos you're talking about, because after the show came out, Carole made it like her life's mission to tell everybody, well, he couldn't read or write past a 4th grade level. The reason she said that, I think, is because she wants people to think that all of the money that he made and they made was hers. Like, I taught him everything I know, so even if he did leave and I got all this money, it should have been mine to begin with because I'm the one that made it happen. That's not true. When they met, in the show they show that he picked her up off the street late at night one night. The street in the show is not the actual street. She was actually picked up. In the show, they say Nebraska Avenue, but it was actually Hillsborough Avenue. And Hillsborough Avenue in Tampa, if you want to pick up, I call them streetwalkers. If you want to pick up someone and have them get in your car and you go have some physical activities with them, you go to Hillsborough Avenue. But Carole was not doing real estate. He picked her up. She was 19 years old. She I admit, when she was 19, she was a nice looking, she was a nice looking girl. But she did not teach him. Matter of fact, here's something that not very many people know about. Carole couldn't even balance the checkbook. She could not balance the checkbook, so Dawn had to put in like these rules that she could not write a check for over $500, and if she would have to call Ann McQueen, the secretary, and get it approved so that Ann could do like the books properly or whatever. But Carole couldn't even figure out how to balance a checkbook, and she was writing these checks that were bouncing, and she just couldn't understand how to do the math for it. Like, no, every time I see, I've seen those clips, I've seen her say that stuff, but every time I see it, I'm just like, if people only knew like the truth.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, she claims that before they met, he wasn't a millionaire, but that's not true because when Don Lewis got like his first divorce, he had to pay his ex-wife. Like there was $1 million settlement. Like I think he paid his ex-wife $1 million plus other stuff and property. And so he had already had millions when they first met. But she also claims in some of those videos that he wasn't a millionaire when I met him. And yeah, that's just a flat out lie. Her claiming that he couldn't read or write, that's a flat out lie by Carole Baskin.
That's what we figured, but we only see what is out there. We don't have any of the inside information.
Yeah. Well, you guys are smart enough to, I mean,
yeah.
Most people are, but there are some people that will see stuff like that and they'll go, oh, well, it must be, if she's saying it, it must be true. But he's not here. He's not here to defend himself either.
Right. Yeah,
you know?
Not a fair accusation, especially. You want to ask your next question? 12. So for Jay's next question, he wants to know who you thought benefited from the disappearance of Don Lewis.
when and I had a consultant, and that's like a great question, Jay, because not a lot of people will ask that. But when there's a murder or a disappearance, or like for instance this college playoff thing that like Florida State not getting put into the playoffs. One of the first questions people should be asking about the college football playoffs is, well, who benefited from FSU not making it? Well, ESPN did. like, you got to figure out who benefited from this stuff. Did Don Lewis's kids benefit? Really, the only person that benefited from this was Carole Baskin and Kenny Farr. And Kenny Farr was the handyman for Don Lewis. Kenny Farr was the guy that told his wife at the time that he would put her in the grinder like he did Don Lewis. But just shortly, like within 3 months of Don Lewis going missing, Kenny Farr was transferred almost $250,000 of real estate from Carole Baskin. This is a handyman. The guy goes missing, and the handyman all of a sudden gets almost $250,000 in property. And then within the next 9 months after that, another $600,000-$700,000 worth of property is put in his name as well. And when I talked to his wife or ex-wife about it, I said, well, was he a real estate guy? Like, did he, buy and sell property or rent out and property? And she's like, no. She's like, he's not that kind of guy. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, that's not the kind of guy he is. Like, if you need handyman work done, that's what he does. But he's not a guy that does real estate or like white collar stuff. She's like, that's not the kind of guy he is. So Kenny Farr benefited and Carole Baskin benefited because Carole Baskin got everything except for the three daughters. Don Lewis had three daughters, and they ended up splitting. Don Lewis had, I think he had a life insurance policy, but I think Carole ended up with about, like, money you can prove. I think Carole ended up with maybe $8 million, and those three daughters ended up with maybe around $300,000 each or something, which, don't get me wrong, $300,000 is a lot of money in 1997.
Right.
But if your dad is worth $10 million and he's divorcing someone, and then all of a sudden that person gets $8 million, and I mean, Jay's shaking his head. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then you have the handyman who is getting almost $1 million in property a year after, within a year. I mean, that's pretty suspicious. And all this stuff this was all public record stuff. Like, this is stuff that was uncovered that law enforcement should have been like, why is the handyman?
Yeah, they didn't bat an eye at that at all.
No, because they didn't investigate.
Wow.
I mean, in the show, you can see, I think it's in episode 2, where one of the clips, I'm like, if you're going to do your job, do your job. But they didn't investigate, because I'm just pulling up all of this stuff. And I'm like, it's so easy.
Yeah.
And then when I was talking to witnesses, and sorry to go on somewhere else with this, but I think it's important. When I was talking to witnesses like that had firsthand knowledge of things, I asked them, did you tell the sheriff's department? They're like, no, they never talked to me. I'm like, they didn't interview you? No. I was like, did you call them and tell them, like, what you knew? They're like, yeah, I called multiple times and they never got back to me. They never came to follow. They never did anything. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then you have, I'll wait for this. Maybe you have a question. I don't know. But if before we're done, I got to talk about the housekeeper, because Don and Carole had a full-time housekeeper. I'll just throw it out. I'll just say, a full-time housekeeper. She worked 8 hours a day at their house. The guy goes missing. Guess who never talked to her about Don Lewis? Law enforcement. A guy goes missing. I mean, you want to talk to everybody that lives in the house. But the housekeeper who cleans, like if there was a fight, if things got broken, did you clean up any blood? They never, ever talked to the housekeeper until I and some other people tracked the housekeeper down, and we ended up, Well, I talked to her and then we did, but anyway, they never interviewed her in 23 years.
That's crazy. And she was there for how long again, you said?
She was their full-time housekeeper. She had worked for Dawn or Dawn and Carole for years as their housekeeper. And on top of that, in the show they showed that will and power of attorney, how it said upon my disappearance, and they made it out to be like a fake document, and the Dawn's former attorney's like, never in my life have I seen a power of attorney say upon my disappearance. But those documents, the person that notarized those documents that seemed to be fake or suspicious was the housekeeper. The housekeeper is the person whose notary stamp is on there. So if she wasn't the housekeeper, you still want to talk to the notary, say, hey, did you notarize these documents? Because that power of attorney gave Carole all of the power of the real estate, all the money. Like, that's where the benefit comes in. That's how you can prove Carole benefited from that, because the power of attorney that was submitted, which the sheriff's department has now said is fake. The sheriff's department has actually come out and said the will and the power of attorney are forged. Finally, they said that. But anyway, that stuff blows my mind, that you clearly see who benefited from it, but you don't investigate. Carole and Kenny benefited quite a bit.
And then I know we had another thing, not totally about that, but it was when we were watching, we were just curious, like, if the $100,000 reward was still out there. That was something that we kind of talked about for a little bit.
Are you guys gonna ask me all these questions and then call the tip line and claim the reward?
Yeah, that's what we were thinking. So.
Yeah, actually, the reward is still available. We raised $100,000 for a reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for Carole Baskin. Matter of fact, in season 2, they show the billboards that were put up, but we actually put up 4 billboards in Tampa. And since my YouTube channel has a playlist of all of this stuff that's been uncovered, my YouTube channel was actually in the corner of the billboards. It said, like, for more info, and it had like RipperJack Media, so people could just go to the YouTube channel and look, because there was Cheryl McCollum. She's like the founder of the Cold Case Institute in Atlanta, Georgia. But she actually said, if you want to know what happened to Don Lewis, go to RipperJack's YouTube channel. He has, I can't remember the exact words, but it said something like, he has the map, like, of all of it. Like, if you want to know what happened, go to his channel and watch it, and you'll know what happened at the end of the day. The reward is still available. I still get calls to the tip line, because the tip line actually comes to me. We were worried. Let me say, let me back up. I was worried, and I speak for myself. I was worried that when tips came in, they would go directly to the sheriff's department. And if the sheriff's department wasn't investigating the case 23 years ago, why would they all of a sudden start investigating now?
Right.
So I was concerned that tips would come in and nothing would. Matter of fact, I was told by one of my sources that I gotta be careful. One of my sources told me if any tips come in, nothing's going to be done, because if the sheriff's department, if a show comes out and then the sheriff's department solves the case, it's going to make them look bad, because you're going to go, well, why didn't they do their job 20 years ago? There's all of this stuff now. So when I was told that, I was like, well, we'll just do the tip line. We'll be in control of it. And then we get that information. We'll pass it forward. And we'll have the tipster also call the sheriff's department and give them the same information. But we wanted to make sure that we had that information. So we still get tips. And then some people, after the show came out, man, I think my phone rang like every 8 seconds from people. Like, I mean, some of it was pretty funny. I think they showed one little thing in the show in season 2. Like, they showed one of the calls that came in, but so many people call at 2 or 3 in the morning after they come in from the bars or whatever. That bitch Carole Baskin did it. I mean, just and I kid you not, maybe 10% of them would call and say, watch Tiger King. All you got to do is go watch Tiger King. It's all in Tiger King. I think those were the people that actually saw the billboard and not the show. And I don't know how many people called and said, all you got to do is go watch Tiger King. You know what happened to him. I was like, yeah, man, I know. But and this was before season 2 came out when we started getting these crazy calls. But when season 2 came out, I think for about a solid month, every 8 seconds, that tip line was ringing. It was crazy. It was just, it was absolutely crazy. But yeah, the reward's still available. It's still up for grabs.
Cool.
You guys can split it, 50 grand each.
Yeah. That'll be perfect for us, right? Might be staying down there if we got that type of money. Don't want to be in the snow anymore.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, speaking of not being in snow, one of our questions while watching the show is, what was Don Lewis planning to do in Costa Rica?
Don had already been to Costa Rica. He had actually bought property in Costa Rica. He was renting houses. He had a house in Costa Rica and a couple of others. And in Costa Rica, they have what they call these flop houses, or they also call them hotels. But here in America, like up in New York, like a 3-story house, and then you turn that house into like an apartment building. So you have like 4 apartments in a 3-story house. And there they call them like flop houses. So Don had some of these flop houses and he was renting rooms out to people. But his ultimate plan, I think he had bought 200 acres down there. His ultimate plan was to do what he was doing in Florida with the exotic animals. But he was going to open up a place like Wildlife on Easy Street in Costa Rica, because the laws in Costa Rica are not as strict as they are in the United States. In the United States, it's pretty strict. And Costa Rica had some of the cats that he really liked, these exotic cats. They were native to Costa Rica, so it was like their homeland for these cats. So he was going to go down there and just relax and have some animals, but he was not going to take Carole with him. He had told numerous people that he was not taking Carole with him to Costa Rica, that he was leaving her behind. Like, he made that very clear. Matter of fact, Don Lewis went missing on a Friday, or that's the last time Ann McQueen, his secretary, saw him. But 2 days before that, on Wednesday, August 13th, the guy, Don's auto mechanic, Don invited, the guy's name was Dale. He invited Dale to go to Costa Rica with him just 2 days before, and said, hey man, I'm going to Costa Rica next week. Do you want to go with me? But in that conversation, Don actually told Dale that he thought Carole was trying to kill him. He said, I think she's trying to kill me. I think she's gonna. And then 2 days later, the guy goes missing.
So that's not something they can use as like evidence or anything, or no?
No,
Where is there just
yeah, no, because I mean, you could tell anybody that, but and it's also like hearsay. Well, he told
yeah,
me this,
yeah,
but there were multiple people months before Don went missing that he had told that. Like this was not the only guy that he had told that he thought she was going to kill him. But it is very interesting that someone says that and then a couple of days later they go missing,
right,
and then the person that benefited from it ends up with the man's cell phone, his Rolex watch, his wallet, and then you have all of these documents that the sheriff's department now says were forged. And I mean, it's part of the equation, though. I mean, because the guy is still alive, so you could bring him in, and I think a good attorney could get that out of him. Even though it's hearsay, I think you could probably get it out there in front of a jury somehow. But you don't even need that. I don't think it's needed, but it is interesting that multiple people said they were told that by Dawn.
yeah, that is very interesting. So much is like weird timing,
What was that?
Just it was like it seemed like it was just like the weird timing thing, like how like if you brought something up like that and then like a couple days later you do something just weird.
If like right now, if you had like if my wife went missing and some of her friends like next week told law enforcement, they said, hey, his wife said that she thought he was going to do this or do something. And I have my wife's cell phone. Dude, I'm getting charged. Like it's a no-brainer. Like but back in 1997 things were a little different, but also especially back then if a male went missing, like it couldn't have been the wife. Like it just wasn't something like when he filed the restraining order, it should have been granted. I mean, but it wasn't. It was like the judge, like, I mean, back then, a guy claiming that he was being threatened by his life, it would have been something back then that a judge would have been like, come on, man up, you know? But yeah, the timing is very suspicious for sure.
Yeah. Another thing that we were curious about was, were you able to ever talk to either of his or any of his business partners that were in Costa Rica?
Yes, I did talk. I did talk to some of his business partners. Now, in season 2, they're interviewing 2 guys that say they were doing business with Don or business partners with him. Or I have no idea who those 2 guys are.
Oh.
In all of the work that we did, I have no idea who those guys are. Their names never came up. When we put the reward out, I had people calling me from Costa Rica that lived in Costa Rica during the time that knew about the reward. And then I eventually got a call from one of Don's former business partners down there and talked to them at length. The crazy thing is, I live in Oklahoma. One of the people that called me that spent a lot of time with Don in Costa Rica actually lives in Oklahoma now. But I did talk to multiple people that they were involved with him in Costa Rica. But those 2 guys in the show, I have no idea who those guys were. And I just found, like always, when I think back to that, I get really suspicious about those two guys because I'm like, these guys never came up in anything, so I don't know where. Like, I don't know who those two guys are and some of the stuff that those guys actually claim to have happened in the show didn't actually happen. Like, they were wrong about things. So I did talk to some of his business people, and there's actually some things that I can't even put out there yet that we did turn over to the sheriff's department regarding some of the stuff that did happen in Costa Rica. Like there was a lot of money involved in the Costa Rica stuff with Don. I mean, he was clearly planning on moving to Costa Rica and just like living the rest of his life in Costa Rica without Carole. Uh-oh, Tim's taking the device. He got all the magic questions now.
Your hand's getting tired, huh? So we really hate to ask this question, but I feel like we kind of have to ask this, and season 2 led us to believe it, at least us personally. But was Don Lewis seeing or dating any underage girls in season 2? Like, it led us to believe.
That's a fair question. I mean, that's one of the things, like those two guys that I was just talking about, like that was one of the things they had said, that there was like a line of girls waiting at like one of these flop houses. No. I'll just put this out there. So one of the reasons that Don was not going to take Carole with him to Costa Rica is because he was engaged to someone else. Don was. So Don had a girlfriend in Costa Rica. They were engaged. She was not 15. She was young, though. She was 19, which was the same age Carole was when Don met Carole. And Don at that time would have been 60, like somewhere around 60. So if you're 60 and you're engaged to a 19-year-old, I mean, I wouldn't, like, that's not something I would do. It's not illegal. Some people I've talked to, I've talked to so many people about this. And some people, say, well, he was actually engaged to a 19-year-old. And some guys be like, oh, man, good for him.
Right.
I'm like, I mean, I can understand that too. Yeah. But, I mean, for me, I'm like, I don't have anything in common with a 19-year-old. I mean, I have daughters that one of them is 19. And, like, I mean, I can have conversations with them. But for me, yeah, it's not something I would do, but to each their own. But no, he was not involved in underage stuff like that. And here's the thing too with that bothered me, and this is a sensitive subject, but in Costa Rica, and I'm not saying this is right, wrong, or anything. In Costa Rica, the age of consent is actually 15. Like, that's pretty young.
Yeah, that is young.
And in some states in America, 16 is like the age of consent. So, I mean, in the show, they did insinuate that there was a 15-year-old. Had there been, which I never did find that, but had there been, it wouldn't have been illegal there. Like I say, I'm not saying it's right or wrong or whatever. I mean, it's a sensitive subject. Yeah. If it were me, no, that's like, no, like but I'm like, if it's legal, it's legal. I mean, yeah. So it's one of those things where, when the show came out, I'm like, what? I'm like,
Yeah, like
I'm like, how did I miss that?
yeah,
You know, so of course
like
then I'm like, really, I'm like calling everybody that I knew down there that knew him, like, hey, like they're claiming this, and people are like, what? Like, no, that never. Um, and with that 19-year-old, her parents had even gave Don their blessing. They're like, they liked him. They liked the guy. Of course, you have a millionaire come in. Costa Rica, you know, a lot of people down there don't have much money.
yeah,
So you have this family, they got a 19-year-old girl, you have this millionaire coming and saying, yeah, I'm going to take care of her. We're going to get married. And Don was very giving with his, like his not his money, but with stuff like he would take, I mean, he did lots of donations to groups that needed it in Florida. Like he was very giving of things. So yeah, I mean, I get you have to ask the question.
yeah. We kind of didn't want to, but we just felt like it was like kind of important to go over. Since,
It
like,
is.
led us to believe that. So
Yeah, it is. And I think that's one of those things where today in like news media and shows, like that's one of the things that media companies will use to try to get attention and create, you know, like,
that's
oh
right.
my gosh, did you see this? Because I had quite a few phone calls on the tip line about what a monster this guy was because of what they put in there. You know, I'm like, yeah, man. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
it really made me do a deep dive because I was like, man, how did I miss that? Like, how did we miss? So yeah, that never happened. And like I said, if it did, like I said, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I don't want to. Like, I really don't have an opinion on it, but it wouldn't have been illegal. Like, if you don't like it, then you know the laws need to be changed. I mean, that's, you know, but yeah, that I mean, it's a fair. It was in the show. It's a fair question, but and the man's not here to defend himself either.
Right.
But
Another one.
I mean, that's all right. You know, I'm glad you guys asked actually because it is something people should know.
Right. Yeah, that is true too. So.
Yeah.
Then I feel like we already kind of know the answer to this question, but I feel like we should just still ask it since we did think of it. Do you believe that he ran off to Costa Rica?
Yeah, no, I don't think he ever left Tampa. I think he's still in Tampa. And actually, yeah, no, I don't. I mean, he was going to Costa Rica. He was doing business in Costa Rica. He had planned on going to Costa Rica the week after he went missing. Like he had plans to go there, but no, he didn't. He didn't leave on. Let's see, what was it? Monday, August 18th, when Carole claims that she saw him for the last time leaving. He didn't leave Monday morning to go to Costa Rica. I think he's still in Tampa today.
We just had like a couple other questions about the show, and then like some closing questions. So we can
Okay,
the
sure.
last couple ones just about the show was this is one that we kind of thought about a little bit was Joe Exotic claimed that Carole dumped Don's body under a septic tank. We just want to know what your thoughts were on that part.
I did an interview with, I can't remember who I did the interview with, but they asked me a similar question about the septic tank theory. And as crazy as that theory is, I think there's some truth to it. And the reason I say that is there was a lady by the name of Judy Watson who was working out at Wildlife on Easy Street. And she was their like educational director. So when people came in like school tours, kids and stuff, she would teach them about these animals or whatever. But so she brought she bought a brand new mobile home to move out there, like a really nice mobile home, and she had a septic system installed out there. Well, the dates of that septic tank being installed fit right into the time when Don Lewis went missing. So in I think it was like June 6th, I think this lady started getting the permits to put stuff in where she was going to go or move in. But the week that Don Lewis went missing, he goes missing on a Friday. On Thursday, the day before he goes missing, and this lady still had the receipts for all of this work on the septic, like the original receipts. But the day before he went missing, she has a receipt that shows like final load of dirt, fill dirt being brought in. So the septic tank was installed the next day, or is finished being installed the very next day Don Lewis goes missing. So I called the company that installed the septic system. The son who was out there during the install owns a company now, or his mom does, or whatever. But I asked them, I said, could you put someone under septic or in it? And they're like, well, in this case, if he was seen on Friday, August 15th, he couldn't be under it. Anyway, they pulled the records for this. They still have the records for this install. And they told me that the clean out on that septic tank is 18 inches. So, 18 inches, it's like a manhole. Yeah. I was like, so could you put someone in there? They're like, well, it depends on how big they were. But, Don Lewis was like 5'10", 140 pounds. He wasn't a giant guy. But an 18-inch manhole, for sure. But yeah, that thing had just been put in, and Kenny Farr, the handyman, was involved in some of that work, installing that septic tank. So Carol's dad knew, Kenny Farr, the handyman, they all knew that septic had just been installed. So I asked the company that put it in, I said, well, how would you do it? They're like, all you do is open up the clean out. This sounds so crude, but this is what they told me. Put the body down there and then put a false bottom in it. I was like, false bottom? Like, yeah, all you got to do is get like 6, 7, 8 bags of concrete, dump it down there, spray water in there, and it will create a false bottom. And then when you do your clean out, you'll never find anything because everything's just covered in that little layer of concrete. And they gave me the exact dimensions of that septic system. It's like I can't remember if it was a 200 gallon or a 500 gallon like septic size, but they had the exact size of it. And they said all you'd have to do is take the clean out and get a measuring stick and measure. They're like, it should be 56 inches deep. If it's 48 inches deep, then someone did something in there. But it's a high possibility that he could be in there, because after season 1 of Tiger King came out, Carole put an offer out there and said, anybody that wants to come check the septic system, if you want to dig it up, you just need to put a new one in. So I took her up on the offer. And I said, I'll do it. I emailed her, I called her. And then about a week later, she makes a YouTube video and says, like, you can, if anyone wants to do it, you can do it, but no YouTubers allowed.
Huh.
I'm not kidding. I'm not making this stuff up. And then I had someone else call that wasn't a YouTuber. And then maybe a month later, Howard, her husband, they put a video out and say, if anybody wants to check it, you have to put $100,000 in escrow. And if we check it and he's not in there, we keep your $100,000. And if he's in there, we'll pay you $100,000 or something to that effect. So I took him up on the offer. I said, okay, I'll do it. I said, we'll get the money and do it. And nope, not going to do it. And I mean,
especially
it is. And they, she won't allow law enforcement to come out and check anything. And dude, if it was me, I don't know how many times I've said this, but if someone was accusing me of hiding someone, I live out in the country. We have septic systems out here. And I was like, if someone was accusing me of that, I'd be like, come on out.
Right.
I'll be happy to get a new septic system. But she won't. She won't do it. It makes me wonder why.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting theory, and it's like would
Yeah,
be believable.
the timing is right, and
Yeah.
that company I talked to, the lady told me, she goes, it's not uncommon. She's like, we've actually found 2 bodies in septic systems that we have put in, that we've installed, and you go
Wow.
out 5 years later to clean them out. She's like, we've actually recovered 2 bodies in ones that we had installed. But you look up Florida, just Google Florida body found in septic tank. It's like a common thing. It's a way to get rid of bodies down there, I guess. It's crazy.
Yeah, that really is crazy. Then we just had one last question about the show, and it was just the thoughts on Doc Antle, and we had some thoughts too.
Okay. I actually did talk to Doc Antle a couple of times because he had information about Carole Baskin. So I wanted to, get anything and everything I could, but I didn't talk to him about. The only thing I talked to him about was like, what kind of information do you have on Carole that could help? Do you have any proof of certain things? But I only talked to him like on the phone. But they did come out with it's not called season 3 of Tiger King, but Netflix did put out a show called The Doc Antle Story. But if you go on Netflix and open up like Tiger King, it should have like recommended or whatever. There's another one which they call season 3, but it's not under the Tiger King thing. It says The Doc Antle Story, and it's, I don't know if it's 4 or 5 episodes, but you can watch that.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting, but I don't know if everything in there is true or not. Like it's hard for me to like, I don't know, but I do know that he has one of the nicest parks there in Myrtle Beach. Like it's a superb, like a big place with some really nice things for those animals. I don't know how the animals are treated. I don't know like that aspect of it. But people that have gone there said it's an incredible place, but I couldn't tell you how the animals are treated or anything. And I just don't know much about Doc Antle, except he is a very interesting person. And he did, he got charged just recently. He got charged with like the animal endangerment and then like money laundering or whatever. But he just settled that case a week or 2 ago. And I don't guess he's doing any jail time or anything. I think he's got to pay, I don't know if it's like a $25,000 fine or something like that. But it appears that, he's found a way to get out of it. And I don't know the details of it, but he's an interesting character for sure. So that's it. Now you guys know everything. I'll also send you that timeline, like Carole's timeline thing. But you got to remember when you're reading it, she never expected anyone to read this. When I read it, it seemed like it was something that she had written down to remember all of her stories that she's put out to the public. Because, like when you make something up and you haven't lived through the experience, you can't remember every detail every time and things change. But I think she wrote this thing down of all of this stuff, and then she would read it from time to time so that she could keep her story straight. That's kind of what it looked like to me, but I could be wrong. But I'll send that to you. as well. It's
That'd be
I'll send. It's really interesting.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that. So that concluded like all of our questions about mainly like the show. Like we had some like they do obviously still like mean like correlate with the show, but they're just more like kind of personal towards you more.
Okay.
Um,
Uh oh.
we were very curious about. There was like one part that made us kind of like look at each other, and it was like we just wanted to know like how did the sheriff department interact with you? Like there was like a part in there that there was like one of the people were like really like ripping on you kind of or something like that. So
Yeah, the lead detective on the case, where he said he kind of made a kind of a derogatory comment, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but yeah, they don't like it when people step on their toes or make them look like they aren't doing their job. And I mean, I don't blame them. Think about it. You're getting paid to serve the public, and you haven't served the public, and then all of a sudden you have some guy on YouTube that starts putting all of this information out there, and it makes you look bad. And so I think they were a little offended, but at the same time, it's their job to serve the public and to solve these kind of crimes. And I always felt like there was enough evidence. Matter of fact, I know there's enough evidence in front of them today to where they could go to the next step. I mean, they have everything they need to do what they're supposed to do, and they should do it. But yeah, they were not very happy with me or the group of people that I had helping. But I think now, I mean, I know they've done quite a bit of work in the last year. So at this point, I've kind of backed off, and I'm going to give them a fair chance to do what they need to do. I mean, if you watch any true crime stuff, just recently, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a guy by the name of Charlie Adelson that finally got convicted for a murder, and the murder happened like 9 years ago. So sometimes it does take some time, but in this case, there's a huge problem that there's not a body. So, when you don't have a body, that makes it really tough.
yeah,
However, they have enough probable cause to get a search warrant. And I think if they did that, then I think they would have their body that they need. But they haven't done it yet. But I said I'm gonna give them a chance, and if they don't do something by a certain time frame, then I'll jump back on and start stepping on toes again.
And then another one that we want to know is like, who did you feel like you felt like or built the closest bond with from the show?
Oh, wow. The closest bond with. Yeah, I met so many people during the process. I mean, the sound guy that worked with the producers was really nice. Matter of fact, he was on. There was a show on one of those fishing shows. Like, I don't think it's called Big Tuna, but it's these guys that go out fishing for tuna. I can't. There's like 5, 6 seasons of the show, but he was actually on that show. I felt a decent bond with him. We had a lot of things that we both had the same interest in, but honestly, I think my biggest bond was probably, and still is, with the family of Don Lewis, and especially Don Lewis's ex-wife, Gladys. She pretty much adopted me into her family, and the three daughters, they all call me their brother. When I call Gladys, I call her mom. When Mother's Day comes around, I'll call her to wish her happy Mother's Day. But the family of Don Lewis, for sure, yeah, they're really special people, and they were not served well by the sheriff's department when Don Lewis went missing. And thing is, they're I mean, they are really, really nice people. Like, they are so nice. And it's those type of people that get taken advantage of by others because they're so nice that at some point they're just like, you know what? Let's just move on with our lives and not hold a grudge and move forward. But yeah, them for sure. The three daughters and Gladys, for sure. They're just, man, they're so nice. I hate that they haven't had justice yet.
They definitely need the justice that they deserve.
I agree.
And then our last question for you about this is just Jay wants to know if there's a season 3 that's coming out that he can binge and if you will be in it.
Well, that the Doc Antle story is what they called season 3.
Figured after we heard that.
Yeah, but if you follow like Jeff Lowe and James Garrettson on their Instagram, they've made multiple postings that they're filming for season 4 right now, but they're saying it's with a different like different producers. It's not Netflix. They just keep saying it's going to be better than, you know, the people that did it before. And I mean, the thing is, you can film something like that, but once it's filmed, you need a distribution company to put it out there. Which, like, Netflix is a distribution company, but they also do make films as well. But most of the stuff they'll buy it and then distribute it. Kind of like a record label. You know, artists make the music, record labels distribute the product. So they claim that they're filming a season 4 now. I haven't. I don't know. Like, I haven't seen. You know, I haven't been called by any filmmakers to say, hey, or this or that. But I kind of believe them because there's a lot of interest in this story with all the crazy things that happen. And I mean, heck, Jeff and Lauren, they moved to Mexico and live in this big old mansion. They've been down there for a year or two. And I will say, and I'm not friends with James or Jeff or any of those people. I didn't really get involved in like the Joe Exotic side of things. But I will tell you, with, you know, everyone says that Jeff Lowe is scum of the earth. He stole the zoo and all that. He didn't steal the zoo. Joe actually gave it to him. Like, Joe put it in Jeff's name to try to keep Carole from being able to collect her $1 million that she owed. And then also, you know, Jeff and Lauren got charged with all this stuff, like from the government or whatever. Like, they were arrested and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, they got released, and the feds, I guess, dropped all the charges or worked something out with them. But they never went to jail or had to go to trial or anything like that. So that says a lot about someone, because, like I said, you watch the show and people go, oh my God, they're so scum, they're bad, they're con people. But if you look at like the legal aspects of it, they didn't get arrested and charged with crimes like Doc Antle did or Joe did. and a lot of their postings I see, they're defending animals more than people. So I think there would be a lot of interest in a season 4. It's just who's going to distribute the product. And there's definitely interest in the Carole Baskin saga, because I get calls and emails for different. I don't want to say too much here, but I there's a lot of interest in the Carole Baskin stuff for sure. With like moving forward with other things. I just don't want to say too much there, but if they're filming a season 4, I'm sure there'll be a distribution company out there that'll pick it up.
Are things like out again?
What's that?
Are things cutting in and out again? So we
Oh, is it freezing again?
Sorry. If we were looking like we had confused faces, it's because it's out.
Okay, it didn't freeze on my end, but it might on your. So do you want to ask that last question again, and we'll just repeat it in case there was an issue or not?
No, it was doing it a little bit before, so I already watched like some of it over to see if it did it. And it like doesn't on the recording. It seems like it's
Okay.
only doing it, like when I'm like on live.
Okay. Well, if there's any issues, just let me know, and I got plenty of time. We can do whatever we need to do. In the future, if we need to do something, that's not a problem. I want you guys to have something like a good end result.
Yeah, we did want to do that.
Yeah. So if you need me to do something, just let me know, and we'll figure it out.
Awesome. Thank you. So we just wanted to say thank you again to RipperJack for allowing us to interview him, taking time out of his schedule and sitting for us for around 2 hours, answering questions, having fun with us, talking about some crazy stuff. Just really wanted to say thanks.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me on. And I do want to commend you guys for getting in front of these cameras and doing your thing, because it's not easy to get in front of camera and put yourself out there for the whole world to see. So thanks for having me on. Keep doing the YouTube grind, as they call it, because it's a slow process.
For sure.
And it's more work than people realize. Like if you don't do this stuff, like the editing stuff, I can remember I'd spend 8 hours editing a video that lasted 12 minutes.
Wow.
Because you gotta, like for me, I gotta get all this evidence. I gotta put it in there, but I would spend so much time and get down. I was like, man, is this only 12 minutes? But it's all good. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on here. And if I go up to the Syracuse area, then I'm going to give you guys a holler, and maybe I'll bring my Spider-Man 2 Deluxe Edition, Collector's Edition game.
Syracuse football game.
There you go. If they ever play the Oklahoma Sooners, then for sure, I'm a Sooner fan. Boomer Sooner, that's right. Yeah, we blew it this year. All we had to do is beat Kansas and Oklahoma State, and we're in the big dance, and the wheels fell off the Sooner schooner.
Sorry, they're never on the Syracuse wagon.
Yeah, it's all right. That's how football is, but I think they're going to expand. Aren't they expanding the playoffs next year?
So. They need to after what happened.
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, they need to go a minimum of 8 teams, I think. But yeah, 16 might be too much. But
they only play like 13 games. I think they could get away with playing 18 or 19 like the NFL does. But who knows?
I would love for them to have a bigger playoff system, like to have the top 16 teams.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, and then you don't have a lot of the controversy, maybe. Right. I mean, there'd be some, but...
There always will be.
Yeah. As long as the top 10 is in, then, I think it'd be all right. But, yeah, right now it's kind of a broken system.
Yeah.
That's all right. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you guys taking the time out.
hopefully we could do another interview sometime in the future or something.
Yeah, just let me know, and I'll talk to some of the people I talked to, and maybe they'll want to come on and talk to you guys. Maybe we get Jeff Lowe to come on here, Jeff and Lauren to come on here and talk about all the crazy stuff they know about Joe Exotic.
Now we have a little bit of more info on it that we didn't know from just watching the show, so they could be a little surprised.
Yeah, actually, I'll send you a link for Jeff Lowe. Actually has a website where he's putting all of this stuff out about Joe, because Joe's on social media. He's got an Instagram account, and which you can't have social media in prison.
Yeah.
I mean, but because he's getting these cell phones, but he'll put stuff out, and then Jeff Lowe has this website where he's putting all this other stuff out, where he's proven like Joe's telling all these lies, and it's the craziest thing to watch. Like you could make season 4 just out of that. But I'll send you the link to Jeff's website. You guys can go on there and look at all the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. Just all of the stuff that he has on there, because I can't help it. Like I gotta go look. I'm like, wow. Like, how did he get all this stuff? Like he's got all these videos and pictures. Well, I know how he got it. He got one of Joe. I guess Joe had some hard drives. And Jeff has them now. And he's got all this, like in Tiger King when that the alligator building burned down.
Yeah.
Jeff has those videos of like, it's really remarkable the stuff that he has. But maybe we can get him to come on here and talk to you guys, and he can expand on that stuff.
Cool. Yeah, we're always open, always available. So.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. And you
so
guys
much.
follow basketball? You college basketball fans?
Yeah, we're getting ready to go watch this game right now.
Yeah. Okay. All right, man. Thanks for having me. You guys have a wonderful holiday, and let me know if you need anything.
All right. Thank you so much, Ripper. Have a good rest of your night.
All right. Take care, guys.
Take care.